You're listening to Let Me Speak to a Manager with Frank Cava and Ian Matthews.
What a crock of shit.
Yeah, that was hot mic, Sam.
It's 30 minutes away. I'll be there in 10.
Do it live! I'll write it and we'll do it live!
Good, you deep-fried, cheese-eating son of a bitch.
Deep fried cheese sticks. The sandwich shop, Frankie, right next door, has the best cheese sticks you've ever had. I want you to come into town just so we can go over there and eat some of the cheese sticks. It's on the kids menu, so you might miss it if you're not looking close. And I don't understand why deep fried cheese sticks are on a children's menu, because it's clearly an adult food. Clearly, would you say it's an adult? That's an adult food all day, right?
I mean, nothing could go finer with $1,000 bottle of cab.
Yes. I mean, I feel like that. I feel like what are you going to put on there next? Buffalo wings on the kids menu? That's an adult food too. Nachos? Come on. Buttered noodles? That's an adult food too. They're delicious.
The most important thing that my wife will want to know is, after you have several cocktails and drink that, do you throw the plate at someone? Do you know what these things all do, Ian? They prevent boredom.
Yes, no doubt they prevent boredom. Speaking of preventing boredom, I went out with some of the boys last night, which I rarely do, especially on a Thursday night, which I don't know why that matters for me, because
every night's basically the same.
Every night's Friday night for Ian Matthews, but they had this like foo-foo drink list that made me think of you, because I never order off of those. I normally just get a Miller Lite or a Jack and Coke, even if they have like 20 designed cocktails. But there was this really delicious gin drink on it, and it made me
give me another one of those bee's knees.
It made me think of that night when I just kept ordering those bee's knees, delicious gin drinks when we went to see Hamilton, which that was not a boring weekend. If the topic of our podcast is about fighting boredom, that was not a boring weekend.
As we get into this, I want to say one thing that's fun. So we're actually going to talk about something I learned at the racetrack, and today would be my granddad's 93rd birthday. Sadly.
Is that true? True?
Sadly, he's long since dead.
Oh, but before you tell that story, can you tell the story of when Grandma brought the whole family into town to celebrate Granddad's birthday, and he abruptly left his own party to go to the track? Can you tell that story? It's fantastic.
I don't remember what birthday this was, but literally we're all sitting around a table. There's 20.
It's in Boston, right? He lived in Boston.
It's
Mass.
Close enough. Mass. Yeah, same city. Worlds away, but close enough. He literally stands up and goes, "All right, I'm off." And my grandmother goes, "You're off." There's 30 of us here for your birthday party. He goes, "Well, the dogs are running at 1. He just walked out the front door and got in his car. Literally
right after everyone sang happy birthday to him and like blew out the candles, he just gets up and leaves his own birthday party that everyone flew into town from all over the country. It's amazing. It's amazing.
Those of us who are smart got in the car with him and went to the track.
Your grandpa's dedication to the dog tracks was second to none.
Yeah, if you want to live a long, healthy life, here are 3 things you can do. Number 1, be married to my grandmother, rely on modern medicine, which is what he did, and be addicted to gambling. Those were his 3 crutches in life, and he lived with diabetes until 87.
I can respect it. Respect it for sure. Well, hey, happy birthday, Granddad. I never got to meet you, but I sure loved all your stories.
Oh, he's the best.
I also like the story of your granddad when he his polite way of calling you fat when you came back from after college.
True story.
What was his exact words? What was his? How did he say it?
We're really getting to this agenda, huh?
Yeah. No, I mean, let's color the picture a little. Who this granddad was? It's an important guy.
I got back from the gym. I was probably, I don't know, 38, 39, and I got back from the gym and I was, fighting middle age. And this is coming from somebody who, granted, is 5'7", 260 pounds, and
diabetic,
and he would never say this about himself, but he would say to anybody else, a little heavy on the ham. So I walk up to him and I say, hey, what's up, Gramps? He's like, oh, I got back from the gym. And I go, yeah, I'm just, trying to stay in shape. And he goes, you've been thinner. From a lazy boy with his cane next to him. And all you do is just nod and say, you are right. I have been thinner.
So, Frankie, what did you learn from your time at the dog track with Granddad?
So, one of the most fascinating things I learned about the dog track. So, if you've never been to a dog track or you've been to one where they have a dog track, like OTBs, where my granddad would go, so you could watch multiple tracks. But the way it worked was this. So, these dogs are chasing after what they think is a rabbit. So, there would be a gate, kind of like with horses. A gate would go up, and then there was this like mechanical arm with this white thing on it. Now, the white thing was dressed up to look like, and more importantly for a dog, smell like a rabbit. So these dogs would just chase after this silly ass pole, and you gamble on it because, what the fuck? It's 20th century. We got to do something to keep us busy. So that's the way the dog track works.
The dogs aren't wired like horses where they're naturally competitive. Like a horse will race to try to win. They want to beat each other.
Certain
dogs don't do that. They'll run all over. They won't race each other.
I think I think there's a mechanism to nature of winning, right? Horses have it, dogs have it. But if you become a professional dog or you're bred to be a dog that chases, they teach you and train you to chase this rabbit. So I think it's partly inherent in being a dog. You want to run, but these are like thoroughbreds are not every single horse. Just like a dog at a dog track, they're a particular breed of horse or dog. They're usually greyhounds, and they're bred and trained to chase. And what they did with this is like literally it wasn't a rabbit because that's harder to maintain. So it was meant to be a rabbit. So the long story short of this is...
I actually never knew. You taught me that they'd sprayed it like a rabbit. That's actually really interesting that it has the pheromones of a rabbit. I didn't know that.
The pheromones and the smell, and they make it smell like a rabbit, and these dogs chase it. And what happens, which is kind of sad, but this is true, is if this dog chases down the rabbit, if it breaks, the arm of this breaks, and the dog catches the fake rabbit, that dog's done. Usually in the old days, I don't know what they do nowadays. They used to shoot the dog because it was absolutely worthless. Because what happened is the dog realized its entire existence was to chase after something, and that thing was really not what they thought it was. Like as soon as the race is over, they hide the rabbit. They move the arm inside and they cover it because the dogs can't see it, because the dogs won't stop chasing it. So if the dog does eventually chase it and they realize, holy shit, this isn't really a rabbit, this is just someone's old t-shirt smelling like a rabbit, it ruins them.
Yeah, but whether the track owner was a piece of shit and shot the dog or not, the bottom line is that dog can't race anymore because it won't chase something that it knows is fake. It thinks its whole existence is bullshit, so it just won't race. It won't.
That's exactly right. It's
everything. Done racing. It's done racing. It ruins
everything it thought was fundamentally true has changed, and because it doesn't have anything to chase anymore, like these dogs fall into depression. All types of things start to happen, but they're certainly not race dogs anymore. If they could actually even live.
Yeah. So Frankie, when did you incorporate Kava companies?
I quit my job and started in 2009. So 15 years ago.
16 years of running a business where the core business really hasn't changed much. The core business, right? There's lots of ancillary businesses that you've attempted, you've tried, you've some very successful, some you've tried and shuttered. But you've going through 16 years being an owner, and you don't have a manager. You've got to be your own boss, your own motivator. You have to find ways to bring in new rabbits because the same rabbit you're chasing all the time, it's hard to get yourself up for it, right? Especially that long in the same market where not a lot changes. You've had to find a lot of different ways to keep yourself motivated because there have been times where you've caught the rabbit and then you're like, well, that was it. All right. So you got to find new ways to keep yourself motivated.
So I think initially, like what it is, there's kind of stages to this, right? Like you quit your job and you're like, all right, my first goal is I don't want to have to go get another job. So like that becomes the first thing. And then you kind of get over that hurdle. And then the next hurdle is how do I want to maintain this or what do I want to build or what I want it to look like? So for me, like it was first, don't go back to work. And Ian and I talked about this and he thought I was nuts. He's like, what's your goal? And I said, never to have to put on a suit. And Ian's like, well, what do you mean don't put on a suit? I go, if I have to put on a suit, I have to go interview. And I have to interview, I've lost. So that was the first one. But then I had sustainability. And I was like, okay, what do I do longer term? So I set new goals. So I wanted to get 50 rental doors. And then I got to 100 rental doors. And I got to several hundred rental doors. And then it was like an employee count. And it was a revenue count. So I constantly would iterate and change what it was that I was going after. Although it's single family homes, I kept moving the bar. But what happened with me and where I'm at today is the market isn't really, we're not in a spot where you can add houses. They don't make sense. They're too expensive to buy and they're too expensive to finance.
Yeah, it's like being like Warren Buffett when the stock market's bubbled. Like it's a boring time for Warren. He just sits on cash and waits for something bad to happen. You're not growing at that point. You're watching.
You're doing something else. So if you're just trying to chase the housing rabbit, you get bored. So what we're really trying to do now is, since the market has changed, is we're trying to do things with less people, with less spend. We're changing something else inside of the business. And where I think we're going with this is I've had to set new goals. I have to come up with new rabbits. And what are the rabbits? They have to be things that are beneficial to the business for sure. But then there are things that you have to get people excited about, or you're going to end up doing a lot of this stuff alone. So you have to package certain things in certain ways that it makes sense. Like, oh, we should chase after this. There's a reward to it, because there's not a lot of fun in maintenance.
Yeah, it's funny, and sometimes you can get really bored with anything, right? It can be in your career, it could be with a pursuit you've got. About a year ago, my son, when he was turning 13, started getting more interested in lifting weights. So he would come into the weight room with me and lift, right? And for me, Frankie, I haven't had a workout partner in 20 years, probably since Chicago, when, I had a friend that I would meet and we'd go lift. So I've been self-motivating myself to show up to the gym, but you go through the motions, it's like, I don't want to come in and do the same friggin' routine I've done for 7 years, like not really pushing yourself to get heavier, do anything else. But when I started lifting with IJ, he started, he's obviously curious. What's the most you ever lifted? How much could you do in your prime? How much could you do? Oh, that's a lot different than you're doing today. But one of the things that kind of stuck with me was, wow, you bench pressed 300 pounds when you were in college? And I was like, yeah, I did. And he's like, that's a lot of weight. And he's like, how much do you think you could do now? And I'm like, oh, not 300. And he's like, well, why? And I'm like, I don't know. I'm older. I was more intense about it then. But like the more I was explaining, I'm like, these are kind of all bullshit reasons, I guess. Maybe it's just not important to me anymore. I don't want my shoulder to fall off. But Frankie, it kind of motivated me. I was like, you know what? He's like, do you think you could if you worked at it? And I'm like, if it was a goal, yes. I think if I made it a goal, and it's interesting. So I really focused on it. I put like a high school football powerlifting routine together. And I mean, I'm bench pressing now more than I did in college. Like I'm stronger because I wanted to just show my son, look, with work. Yeah. Look what I did. Look what I'm doing. Like at the time when he asked me, I can maybe bench press 225 4 or 5 times. I can do it 15 times right now. And that's like a lot of work went into that over the last year. But the point I'm making on this is I've been way more inspired going to the gym because I've been writing down what the numbers that I was putting. I'm not just doing the same boring 3 sets of 8. I've been trying to push myself to do extras. I've been kind of adding extra things to the routine. I've had a new rabbit to chase. It's been really fun for me going to the gym the last year because I kind of have a little shit to go prove wrong. and go show that I can do something. Right now, I'm not going to do it indefinitely. Like now that I've kind of reached that max, I'm probably going to slow down because I don't want to have shoulder surgery or something stupid. But it's been fun for me. For me, I found a new reason to be motivated and not bored in the gym.
So I think what happens in life is this, is you have to come up with your own rabbits, or society will give them to you. Or
Ooh, I
using
like that. I like
using
that.
yet another analogy is you'll become the frog in the boiling water. The frog doesn't jump in the boiling water, but the boiling water will boil. Like the frog jumps in the water, and the water temperature goes up, and it gets cooked because it's in there. So, like if you think of people, if we just stick with fitness, I'll use myself as an example. I was incredibly fit. I had a program. I did everything. But just slowly over time, it dwindled and it dwindled and it dwindled. And I still thought I was doing a lot of the right stuff, but the results were terrible, and I had to make a drastic shift to get it back. So it's hard because you have to be honest with yourself and you have to set new goals. And new goals, setting new goals, coming up with new things, it's not very fun.
Yeah.
Starting over kind of sucks. You think of it's like, it's good now, why would I do that?
Mm-hmm.
Whenever you read a book or you talk to somebody who started a company or you talk about any of this type of stuff, I went golfing on Tuesday with somebody and he literally goes, I remember the old days. We were pitch broke. We worked in one little office. There was 4 of us around a table. He goes, but those were the best times because you're starting from scratch and you're going and you're grinding and you're building something. I hiked Kilimanjaro. I remember the way up and I remember the way down. I barely remember the view from the top. But you remember how hard it is to get there and you remember how hard it is to get back down. But holy shit, like you're up there and you're like, all right, you're there for 20 minutes. It's like, should we start heading down now? Like, so it's, you fly all the way there. You spend all of this money to do you get to the top and see that view. But it's not what really the payoff is. The payoff is the grind on the way up and down. And you have to remember that or you become stale. And you've got to figure out, how do I set new parameters and new things to go after? Because the chase is the long-term part. It's not the arrival.
We've talked about this before in why there are so many thousands of one-hit wonders, right? They grind and grind and grind and grind, and they've got this goal that they want to hit. And then they get a hit, and they never get another hit.
Yep.
Because they reach the mountain and they stop. They don't have a second goal. They get to the mountain and they're like, that's it. Like, this isn't as fun now that I've reached it as it was when everything was a question mark and I wasn't sure I was going to get there. And we were just grinding in shitty clubs every night in LA somewhere until 3 a.m. and then doing it again the next day. That was way more fun than becoming famous and having a hit music video on MTV and having to do interviews. They don't have a second act. They can't find a way to remotivate themselves.
Jerry Seinfeld talks about this. I've heard Lady Gaga talk about this. I've read John Mayer. I heard a quote. Taylor Swift has said this. All of those 2 different types of genres. One's a musician, or 3 are musicians. One's a comedian. But the point is, with every single one of them, they fell in love with writing. They sat down with a routine to write every single day. Jerry Seinfeld says the first things he does every day is he gets his yellow pad and he just writes. Lady Gaga writes. John Mayer said it this way, and I thought it was great. He goes, you sit down and you grind, and it's hard to write a song, and you hope it'll be a hit. Most of them won't be. If you're lucky, some of them will be. He goes, but you have to fall in love with the process of writing. Taylor Swift has talked about, like, just literally, I just love the process of grinding and figuring out how to write a popular song. Like, that's the whole thing. It's not the hit. It's that process of getting to it. How do I get all of these thoughts into a 3-minute arrangement where I can get it into a song? And if you fall in love with that part, think about who the best musicians are. They're people who, this is fun. I just thought of this. Did you ever see the interview with Matt Damon where he explains why Jack Nicholson has been popular for so many years? Did you ever see this?
No.
All right. So this is fascinating. You've seen the movie The Departed, right?
Yeah.
Jack Nicholson explains to someone, he goes, the reason I've been at this for 4 decades is because I'm a great writer. And the guy's like, what do you mean? He goes, well, I got the script and it was a half page. It's an hour worth of work. And what I decided is I said, look, I don't want to do this scene alone. I want to bring somebody with me. So he does. And he reads the scene. He does the whole thing. But he goes, instead of it being a man that I kill, I want to make it a woman. So we're going to change that part up. And then because I have a sidekick with me, I'm going to keep going. He goes, so if you see this interview, it's hysterical. He goes,
Oh yeah, where he talks about
if you keep the camera rolling. And then
Yeah.
he says another line. And
Yeah.
he goes, but if you keep the camera rolling, and he says another line.
Then we start talking about they fell weird, and then
Yeah.
yeah.
It has all these consequences, right? Like
Yeah.
it makes you know that, oh my God, I had sex with a dead person. And not only that happened, that person fell funny, which leads me to believe that you've killed somebody else. So it's all these different things, right? But what kept him relevant isn't being in front of the camera. What kept him relevant was he knows how to understand the character and elaborate on the character and give the director more. And by doing those things and leaning into those things, the scene got significantly better. So why do you hire someone who's clearly a credible actor? Because they'll take your great piece of work and make it better. That's the process. That's the whole part of it. And we'll have to put it in the show notes. Of course, Ian will do this since he does all the work around here. But we'll put that clip in there because it's just incredible. But that's falling in love with the process.
Yeah. And I think for me, we talk a lot about motivation and goals to me are so much more important than resolutions to yourself. And I think I never think that a goal is a goal until you tell someone else. Then
Yep.
it becomes a real goal. When you share it with someone else, when you tell someone, me telling my son, okay, I'm going to bench press 300 pounds. I'm going to do it by the summer. I'm going to, you little shit, I'm going to do it. Right now, I put myself out there. Now I'm motivated. Now I'm inspired. I didn't think it. I said it out loud. It was specific. How much weight am I going to lift? Is it measurable? Yep. He's going to see whether I did it or not. Is there a time limit on it? Yep. Right. Is it attainable? It was. Right. I had to go do it. It's a very specific thing that you do. But if I'm being honest with myself, Frank, I've had years that I've gone through where I've had no goals at all. I did okay. I still grinded my ass off, like, because I'm busy and I've got a lot going on, but I didn't really have a goal. And in those years, it was really easy to get bored, to get that's kind of where you lose your purpose. You lose some of your enthusiasm to come into work. You're just doing work and making money. And I find that when I have a North Star that I'm chasing, when I have a mountain I'm trying to get to the top of, I have a goal, I'm just so much more, I'm just happier. I'm happier going to the office. I'm happier leaving the office. I'm happier waking up in the morning, going to bed at night, because I'm competitive with myself that I'm trying to go accomplish something more than, and it's not like accomplish something isn't make money. It's got to be more than that. It's got to be something that I'm trying to go scale.
So what I think I want to move to is this, and inside of the business now, what I have to chase is different than what I had to chase before. What I was chasing before was more doors, more revenue, more like all of these things, right? So it was this offense all the time. We've used this analogy before, like it's all Dominique Wilkins, it's all offense. There's no defense.
Yeah.
But the economy has changed. Things are different. So instead of having a company with 53 employees, we can't afford 53 employees. So we've had to change. But there's not a lot of fun in maintenance. It's boring. It's not. It doesn't attract. It doesn't feel worth chasing. So what you have to do is you have to change the perspective around it. Instead of saying, "Hey, we're going to go from 53 to 28 employees," it's like, "Well, what can we achieve with a smaller group? What can we utilize some of these savings for? How can we tighten up some of our metrics and actually measure things in a way and then chase after them? Can we put a little bit of a contest or a little bit of a carrot in front of us and chase?" And when I talk to young business owners or people who don't know exactly how they want to drive their careers, it takes a lot of, it takes just balls to come out and say, "I'm going to do this," or "I want to chase this," or "I want to go after this." It takes definitive decision making. And you must do it, I think, as a business owner, but even someone who works inside of a business, both of which are critical. and we can kind of talk a little bit about like how to do the reset and kind of refocus into what should you chase.
Yeah. I especially when you look at most companies right now are trying to get their businesses right sized for whatever this next leg of the economy is going to look like. You know, it the bottom line is we've been on a hell of a heater with the economy for a dozen years now. And whether it's got another 3 or 4 years left, I don't know, but it's probably later innings. And companies are going to have to get some kind of discipline. You're not alone. Google, Amazon, Facebook, Microsoft, all of them have been laying people off for 3 years. Now they're all growing like mad too. They're just trimming up the parts of the business that no longer make money.
That's
And
right.
they're going and focusing, which is fine, right? You
It's also
do this.
called finding a new rabbit. They're not chasing after the shit that doesn't work anymore. Like Jeff Bezos has come out and said, yes, the Amazon Fire Phone was a tremendous failure, but you don't get to Amazon Web Services if you don't try and innovate a phone too. And you're going to have some failures, but then you got to be true about it, cut it, and move.
Yeah. But you also have to have a good why, right? So when I talk about a North Star or a goal, Frank's why is much deeper than, well, the market's a little bit slower. You know, Frank's why is he's got a couple young boys, he's got a family, and he works a lot of hours, and the real estate business requires a lot of debt. And it certainly requires more debt when your expenses are too high and your payroll's too high. And that the higher his average monthly expenses are, the more hours Frank has to work, or the more nights he goes without sleeping because he's worrying about meeting that payroll. So a lot of what Frank's doing, there's multiple derivatives of it, but getting your business right sized, getting your debt right sized, getting your expenses right sized, all of that leads to a why, which is more time with my kids, less distant when I'm around my family because I'm not thinking about all these, things that are stressing me out about my business. Your why is a few levels removed, but it's motivating, right? It's a motivating thing to do. And your challenge is getting the same inspiration out of a group of employees, right? Out of 25, 30 employees. How do you get them as inspired around the goal when they might not have the same why?
That's exactly it. And you have to think of things that are fun and worth chasing for other people, right? And you have to set it up that way. And what it really comes down to, and this is hard, building like a bonus program for somebody is a massive pain in the ass if you own a small business. And the reason it's a pain in the ass is this. Number one, you got to come up with the plan. You have to be able to measure it. So you have to come up with all the measurables that come up with the plan. And then you have to physically measure it. Then you have to tell the person, how you doing? Are you doing well? Are you not doing well? And then you have to constantly measure it. There's so much work that goes into just something simple like a bonus plan, because but you have to have something to measure against. But if you don't have something to measure against, you can't set up a parameter, and people don't know if they're winning or they're losing. And then they lose something to chase. So you have to be innovative to think about what we should chase. Now, if you own a business, you also have to think about, am I incentivizing the right things? Should I just be incentivizing top line, which is revenue or sales? Maybe, but maybe you need to incentivize things closer to the bottom line, like spend or efficiency or time. And it's just gamifying these things from the standpoint of making them interesting for others so they can get on board. If you are an inline worker at a company and you're like, okay, I want to protect myself, you can do these same things. You can think of, how do you incentivize yourself? What does the company need that it isn't looking for? Where is there innovation? Where can I bring new ideas to the table? In addition, if you have a small team or even a large team, how do you incentivize that group of people to be the innovation or the change that the place that you work at needs? That is how, even in a downturn, promotions happen, upward mobility happens, people recognize you, because so you have to unpack it and get it to a point of, I need something to chase, I need a North Star, I need something. And then these are the ways that you can put them in place from both small business and inside of an organization.
And I think as a manager, Frank is running out of contest right now. So, you sit in front of people and you're like, hey, we got to get lean and mean. We got to get efficient. We got to cut some expenses, find some silly things we're spending money on. To the typical person, it's not their money. So it's like, all right, we'll do that, Frank. So Frank's running out of contest. Like, let's try to spur some creativity. And as a manager in a company, as an executive, you have to understand that humans are wired in a way that once they reach a goal, their motivation plummets, it plops, right? The chasing of it, their motivation's really high. So you have to find new reasons. For me, Frankie, and we talked about this, uh, I worked for two Fortune 500 companies for 20 years, not 10, two. Two people kept me for a very long time, and I made a lot of money for them. But both of those companies were really good. It never letting me go too long without giving me some new challenge. NVR in particular was great. I was there 13 years, and I almost every 18 months they gave me a new piece of shit office that was falling apart and asked me to fix it. And to some people they might not like that. It keeps upsetting them. But to me, every time they would do that, I had just caught the last rabbit. And so I was kind of despondent, right? I'd be like, well, what do I do now, right? I'm just going to go meddle with people. And then they give me a new office and be like, hey, Baltimore's a piece of shit. It's falling apart. Hey, what about Gaithersburg? They got a ton of turnover up there. And every time I'd be like the dog seeing the rabbit that's, with the pheromones running off, and I'd be out of the gates like, hell yeah, let's go. Yeah, Charlotte, they've been broken for 3 years. Thank you very much. And every time I would fix it, then I would kind of be like malaise for a while, like, oh, this sucks. But that company kept me a long time by always giving me some new challenge. And I think it's not everyone's gonna be wired like me, where they always want something broken to fix, but contests, rewards, trying to find smaller intervals of time to get someone really focused and excited, really important from a motivation perspective if you're an executive or a manager trying to get the most out of people.
And you have to connect it to people, right? You have to think about why are they chasing it? What's in it for them over the fact that you're just going to get a paycheck? Like, I can tell you why Ian burned out and was tired of it after 13 years. IJ got to an age where he was starting to miss baseball games and didn't want to go, didn't want to not, it wasn't worth it to fly to Cleveland. He'd already done it in Baltimore and Charlotte and DC and all these other markets. Like, now I got to fly to Cleveland. Like, Cleveland sucks. Is there a part of the year that anybody wants to be in Cleveland? So it's like, I'd rather be on a baseball field in Vienna. So that's when it comes down to having new staff or having new challenges or doing new things. And sometimes you got to reinvent. And if you need to reinvent yourself inside of something, you have to look at, like, what's another challenge? How do I add value around this company? You tend to have more ability and more latitude to create for yourself if you're proven that you actually can help the company in certain ways, right? Like, the people that are internal that are feeling that, but know how to innovate, change, try something new, bring a new line of business. Those are the folks that continually get to innovate inside of a company. NVR is a little bit rigid that way. A company like mine is a lot less rigid because we're just smaller. We can be, but those are things that get incentivized and can be very rewarding longer term.
And I think just like the one hit wonders, they were happier when they were being creative.
Yeah.
When they were creating, they weren't as happy once they reached the top and then they had to go to 100 concerts and sing the same song over and over again, execute on something they created. It was more exciting to go create it than it was to just go sing it over and over and over again. And I think, Frankie, one thing for me, you've been really good at innovating in your business and creating new lines of business, new revenue streams, new ideas. Frank has gotten into a title business. He got into the recruiting business. He's in multiple different lines of real estate. He's been in what do you call in your masterminds? He's got different revenue streams that he's brought in. For me, I sell programs. So we have multiple leadership programs, but this year I told a client they had asked for something specific, and I said, I don't really have that, but I'll build it if you'll give me some orders. How many people would you want? and I got a 6-figure order, and I said, all right, cool. I got to go build this. But it was daunting because I hadn't built something that big in 4 years. I've been, selling largely leadership essentials, my big class for managers. So I went and built this program, but I had to, once I had the order, now I knew in 6 months I got to go deliver that. Then I had to go break it down into daily tasks. So every morning I got in, I had time blocked on my calendar before I did any of my coaching calls. I would spend an hour building it. And for me, it was real, like in my world, it was as simple as, okay, I'm going to build 5 slides a day. That's it. 5 slides. Probably by the end of this, I'm going to need something close to 300-400 slides built out. I would just say 5 a day. That's it. If you do 5 a day, you're getting closer to your goal of having this program ready. And there was some, right? I had to do some cramming and everything at the end, but you got to be able to take that goal and break it into something you're doing every day, right? The Seinfeld piece of writing every day. You've got to be able to break it down. And this has been one of my funnest years with 5-on-4 group by a lot. And it's because I'm creating actually I'm on a 3rd program now. I've done more creating this year than going back to 2018 when that whole year was creation, right? There was no execution. There was no customers, no orders. All I did was create, and that was a fun year. This year has been more fun because I'm creating and I'm executing. I have an actual business. Revenue comes in, right? But I'm also creating new lines of business, new products, new programs. So for me, it's been an incredibly fulfilling year because I've had best of both worlds.
If I said to you, can you, over the last 20 years, go back to 2020, or excuse me, 2000, you're 2000, 24 years. What years stand out? Like, could you easily identify some years?
Yeah, I could.
Go
Yeah,
ahead, pick 2 or 3.
Uh, 2005, first year with NVR, brand new business, brand new industry. I'd say 2002, promoted into my first management job. So I had all new kind of aspects. I would say 2008, when my region combined with another. I went from Virginia to Virginia, Maryland. So I had to kind of combine all of it. Those jump out big time. And then I would say, God, just about every other year after that was kind of a fun year because my region kept expanding. And I would say the most miserable one is when I finally reached the top and got the SVP. That's because I knew there was nothing after that. Now all branches reported to me. That's when I started thinking of leaving the company because it was like, well,
so for me, it's
nothing new no land to grab, no land left to grab. I don't care.
For me, 2001, pretty simple, right? I got promoted to sales. September 11th happened. I was scared shitless. That was a really big push for me. I remember 2009 when I left NVR and started this, and I was scared shitless. I remember 2015 is when I met my wife. 2017, I got married. 2018, I had my first son. I remember 2013 incredibly well because I was doing triathlons and I was chasing after something that was so hard in the middle of my week, and it broke it up. That's right off the top. Those are mostly successes. Those are mostly big things that happen in and around the day-to-day. So you have to have stimulation that comes from different places. September 11th was not chosen, but I remember crystallizing and saying, I can fucking get through stuff because that happened and pushed and challenged me. I remember 2013 and doing triathlons and being like, I need to not drown. And I didn't. I did a great, like that was the year I actually dominated. I did 12, 13, 14. 13 was the year I smashed it. So like those are little things. So it's like you have to have things to chase. Ian didn't mention his wife and his kids. He got married before these things happened. But like for me, those all were in and around the business. And while I was growing an incredible business, most of it happened when I had a wife. Like the exponential growth came when I was focused on the business and being a husband, not being single and running around doing other things that I was doing. So having something to chase inside of the framework that you're trying to build is critical. And you're going to have some hurdles that you don't think about But those are the things you look back on and you're like, those are the good things. Those are the best of things. I didn't see that coming, and holy shit, that it challenged me and test me. And that's the stuff I love the most.
Yeah, I like that, man. And I would just, as we wrap this up, I would just say, if 2024 for you is feeling a lot like more of the same of 2023 and 2022, and you're getting bored, that's not going to improve on its own merit. You have to take the initiative to ask yourself what you really want to accomplish. What do I want to accomplish in 25 that I would be proud of? I love to do this little exercise. We almost always do it at Christmas, where Jenny and I will just have a bottle of wine wherever we're at. We normally vacation around Christmas. We'll have a bottle of wine, and we just like to look back at what were our favorite things from the year, right? What are the favorite moments with the kids? What are our favorite vacations we took? What are our favorite things that maybe happened in business? And I always like to kind of do the exercise of, when we're sitting here next year, what do we want to be saying were our favorite things from this year coming up? I love that exercise. I love that kind of future vision. In 1 year, and I like to journal this stuff too. In 1 year, I will be very proud if I can say what. And then I bullet them out. I list it all out, right? And I did this exercise a year ago with my new programs, right? I wrote down how many people went through the program. The program will be done by this day. I'll make X amount of revenue if that's the case. I write it all out, Frankie. I write down exactly what I will be proud of in 1 year, if I can say that. But if you don't go through that exercise of talking about why will I be more energized in 25 than 24? What are those goals? What am I trying to do? You won't accomplish it. If you don't write it down, if you don't state it as a goal. Those two new programs that I just talked about, I've only got one complete, but I've already banked over $300,000 in revenue on it. And that program didn't exist 8 months ago. And so if you don't really write the stuff down and you don't get excited about it, it doesn't happen, right? And boredom lends to less money. If that's all your job is going to be, is show up and do more of what I did last year to make money, that's not how wealth's created. You got to be excited as shit to go make a lot more money than you did the year before.
Choosing something to chase is the thing that I think separates happiness from misery. And if you don't have those things inside of your life and you don't create them, someone will create them for you, and you'll look up and say, how the hell did I get here?
Yeah.
What I think has to happen is you have to have the boldness to choose. And then you need to take action. It's just that simple. But I remember when I was trying to set goals for this business, and they were daunting and they were scary, and I wasn't sure I was worthy. I wasn't sure that I could do it. I like who the hell am I to write these things down? And I've surpassed every wild dream I had way back then. But you have to write something down. You have to have something to chase, and then you have to take action. And then as you're starting to take action, you either need to say, am I happy here? And will I be happy at this spot? Or is there more? And if there's more, you need to iterate, come up with new things and write them down and chase after those. And sometimes you're going to be regaining old ground. Sometimes you're going to be gaining something new. But the point is, you have to have something in front of you that you're going for if you want to achieve. And it's in anything. I've seen this with people who are great family people, great moms and dads, like they're getting the kids through middle school, get them into high school, getting them into college. Like these things come in compartmental 3 to 7 year windows. And that's how it works. But it's the hurdle has to be in front of you for something. And then if you keep setting those hurdles, to me, that's where reward comes from.
And it's fun to, when you have kids, it's fun to set some we goals with them, right? So how are we going to make the honor roll? How are we going to make it into advanced math after this semester? How are we, I love to do those things with Madison, right? Math isn't the easiest for her, but she kicked ass this year and got an A and worked really hard, but it's a we goal. I help her, I put together practice tests. We work together on our homework. So we have some goals together. IJ, How many home runs are we going to hit this year, buddy? Okay, well, let's work backwards. Let's start on this. That's really fun for me too. Those are ways that my years are really rewarding when I have joint goals with my kids that we're working on certain things and they can see some of these things too.
There's an old study that's an old Harvard study from the 80s. And they went back to Harvard. If you got into Harvard, it's not easy to do, number one. And it's, the best and the brightest, at least for some period of time. So the high achievers. But the people who wrote down their goals, the 20% of the group that wrote down their goals achieved more than 95% that didn't. So like to that end, it's a small group of people that write. If you have something written, it becomes manifested, but you have to have the time frame. You got to just sit down and do it. And if you're teaching this to your kids, you're teaching your kids how to build achievement, right? Like there's little things along the lines, but it's an entire process that if you lean into it and you set things and you chase them and you accomplish them and you set something new, it almost seems like you're, in a maze, if you will. But the upside of it is that's where reward comes from. And I think people who constantly do this to themselves and challenge themselves are the ones who look back and say, I've had an enriched life. And you can be set in anything. It can be set with business, but it doesn't have to be. It can be relationships, making sure you talk to 5 people a month. Like it could be whatever the hell you want it to be. And it can fit. That's the best thing about all of this is you get to choose.
Love it. Well, Frankie, my goal is to head over to the sandwich shop after this and get some of those cheese sticks because I've been thinking about it. I really haven't heard a word you said the last 45 minutes and 38 seconds because I've been thinking about those cheese sticks and that marinara sauce at the sandwich shop. It's friggin' delish. I'll send you a picture. You get excited about it.
What I feel
no boredom while I'm eating those cheese sticks, big guy.
What I feel like right now is to hit the red button.
Good to see you, homie.
I'm setting a goal and I'm going to achieve it, Ian.
Yep, do it, dude.
See you, man.
Brother. If you like what you just heard, and judging by the viewership numbers, you did, hit that follow button and leave us a 5-star review. It helps other people find the show. And it lets Frankie and I know that, a few people are listening to this.